going here. We'll start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to our Zoom meeting today for our committee meetings. We're going to jump into our Protective and Social Services Committee agenda. On this committee is myself, Councillors O'Toole, Councillors Friesen, and Mayor Clayton. And we'll start our business with our opening delegation. And I'll look to, I believe I saw Steve and Judy there online. So if you guys want to jump in and unmute yourself and please give us your report.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see your faces again. We are having a continuation, you all know, from our November 18th meeting when we met with you, and it all initiated from a conversation regarding Smith Lands and the replacement of the 24 units that were sold that were social housing. And at that meeting, you'll all recall that direction was given to both administrations, I think. Well, you guys couldn't give a direction to us, but it did go to your CAO that our administrations work together to bring forth some additional information and what the needs were. So Steve's going to have many of the answers. If you have anything regarding board-wise that you would ask me, I for sure will respond to those. But Chris's work, Christensen has been on our foundation, and so from some of the things that happened at strategic planning, along with this request out of that, your council strategic priorities working group that we met with in November. And so Steve has also worked really, really closely with Chris Manuel, your director. So I'm just going to say I'm really grateful to meet again with you and that we continue bring this process forward on what the great needs of housing are within our region. So thank you very much. Go, Steve.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Councillor Platt. So this is our return to you guys with the suggested project. What we were asked to do in Grande Prairie was to try to figure out how many units would be required to service 50 social housing units if we were to bring back that number. It was just a number that we came up with together. And that number worked out to roughly 150 to 160 units, with those units all considered pretty well over the market, exception of the 50 social. So from there, what we need to do is Grande Prairie needs to put a business case together that we would submit to the province. And part of the business case requires a costing analysis, which we also need to go to CMHC with for funding to assist with the building funds. We need a project manager. We recognize both organizations kind of missing that ingredient to make sure that this project is successful. And last was the potential for P3 consideration or joint venture consideration. We know that if there's markets on the table, this is going to need a discussion from the investment community, or at least consideration for them to get involved if possible. So we've also included that component in this discussion. So the request at this point to the city is for $280,000 for us to progress this project along. There are other project components that we're slowly starting to hear from city that may be available that are included in the $100,000, which is environmental phase 1, geotechnical, the typical items that need to be completed at a land site before any funding is actually considered by entities like CMHC. So I leave it with you, Mr. Chairman. If you guys have any questions, I think the letter spoke really well to the rest of the components.
Great, thanks for that, Steve. Appreciate that. Any questions from committee? Councillor Bressy.
Great, thank you. Just something I still don't quite understand, and my apologies, I know you've explained it partially to me in the past and I'm just not recalling, is the taxing authorities that Grand Spirit has. And are costs like this, would they be eligible to be a direct tax for the city of Grande Prairie instead of it having to come through our municipal programs?
Yes, we checked into the requisition component that you're mentioning, and the province recommended against it. What they suggested is that the city, if you wanted to do this, that you create a tax yourself to gather the capital or operating, I guess, but I assume you're thinking the capital side to assist with this project. They recommended against the requisition. That's not really what this type of product is intended to assist with. Requisitions are intended to assist with seniors lodge or directly with the seniors side of the accommodation.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Friesen.
Thank you, Chair Platt. Thank you very much, Steve. This is a great, the letter had all the information mostly that I wanted to know. My question regarding the project manager $100,000 budget, is that to kind of get this going, or would that amount of money see that project consultant through to the end of the build?
And that's a good question, Mr. Chairman. We would like to stretch the dollars out as much as we can. The P3 component itself and that analysis by those consultants, and there are two different consultants, I'm sorry, the project manager from the P3 consultant, forgive me. Okay. That breakout, we believe is going to be in the 50 to 60,000 range for the P3 search. Though that is completed by a very high level and a lot of connections with ministries, ADMs, DMs, et cetera. So there's a lot of work that goes into that, and then connected back out to the investor community down to the actual agreement. The project manager portion of it is to ensure that the project continues or progresses. We just don't have the horsepower here to do it, and we recognize you guys don't either.
Chair Platt, if I may.
Yes.
Just one follow-up with that then. Is the project management of this different from your previous projects? Have you always managed it in-house before? Is this, and in what ways is it different if it is?
Yeah, so in the past, we could use Lakeview as an example. Staff would, I would say, chase the dollars, try to get the funding where possible. Both the CAO and the board chair at that time were quite active as much as possible with the province, so there was no consideration to the investment community. But when the project took off, and we're doing the exact same thing with our Spirit River project, we hired a project manager to take the project to its next level. We just don't have the ability to do that considering the amount of incoming paperwork, I would call it, and keeping up on the project itself. So to have the project manager at the beginning of this project to see it start and get it through, particularly to CMHC's hand, that's an enormous amount of work.
That's great. Thank you, Chair Platt.
Okay, thanks for that. Just to kind of follow up on that, as I'm seeing other hands up, Steve, can you just explain, I mean, moving forward with the capacity that Grande Prairie currently has to get this $100,000 help this project out, is there going to be needs for future projects like that this will be coming up again in the future? Just, you know, or is this $100,000 for a project manager specifically just for this project?
That's a great question, Mr. Chairman. At this point, we do see another large project coming forward. I think it was mentioned at one of your council meetings. It's still unclear to us at this point what the division of duties might be, and can we put a little extra on that project manager's plate with this is quite possible. We'd like to stretch the dollar out as much as we possibly can. I really don't like seeing your guys' faces begging for money. I'd rather not. So if we can stretch those dollars out as much as we can, we will do that. So I would say stay tuned on that. I think there's another exciting project coming. We're just not sure what it's going to cost, and I think we should get back to you guys on that with a definite answer first. Okay.
I guess for me, I don't have a problem with this. I want to support Grande Prairie. I would like to see us advance that land and Smith. The geotechnical and the phase ones, those are things we're going to have to do regardless, and the other ones are just building a business case. I guess there is a little concern that this could be thrown away if for some reason this project doesn't go ahead, but I don't see that happening. I think, Grande Prairie's done a lot of diligence to this point, and they just need some seed funding to get them over the finish line here now. So any other comments or questions from committee, or would anybody want, Mayor Clayton?
Sorry, I was just trying to get off mute there. Thanks, Chair Platt. Question for Mr. Madden or for administration. If this project wasn't to go ahead in the location suggested at Smith, what would that do for the funding? I mean, I would assume if the project was to be somewhere else, you'd still need a project manager. There's still the business case. There's still the cost analysis. The site reports, obviously, at $100,000 are based on Smith. But the other line items as requested would still transfer over to a different location. Is that correct?
And Mr. Chairman, thank you. That's a great question. I'll do my best. And if the administration would also like to jump in, that's a great question. We can get started on the business case and submit through our business plan to the province. That's the goal line here. What the province doesn't like is the instance of us moving around from land location to land location. So the commitment up front is greatly appreciated by them and solidifies what we try to do also with CMHC. So, I mean, we can certainly continue land discussion if that's what's required. Our finish line is May. I'm hopeful that we can get the business case completed by then. That's our initial immediate goal. But if there's other considerations, and I think, you know, talking to administration as of very, very recently, I think what Grande Prairie would like to do to try to assist with that question, if I might, Mr. Chairman, is we would like to work a little bit closer with you guys to try to come up with a longer term plan, like maybe a 10-year, that suggests what other needs we might see coming up, and marry that or try to align that with your guys' affordable housing review, your needs assessment, our needs assessment, and try to pinpoint some future builds that we would see and come up with some land discussion with you guys. Where we'll likely look to hire a consultant to give us a quick hand on the amenities or, you know, locations that would work well in case you guys say, hey, we might even consider purchasing that land. But I think that's another really important discussion we need to continue with administration as soon as possible.
Okay. Councillor Friesen.
Thank you, Chair Palat. This question may be for administration. So we did our affordable housing documents 2 years ago probably, and I know that Grande Prairie did theirs. And also I see that there's about 250 applicants waiting on Grande Prairie's list. My question is, what, if any, overlap is there, and does this, you know, are those 250 applicants reflected in our affordable housing strategy? Yeah, so yeah, what's the overlap? I'll start with that.
Director Bork, sorry.
I'll jump in here as Ms. Hughes might be able to add something, but Director Manuel had just to step away for a pressing matter. One thing I will add, and then I'll turn it over on the specific question, is that Director Manuel has been talking to Finance and myself about how to utilize some existing funding. So as you're considering this letter, one recommendation might be to have administration come back with a potential funding source. Director Manuel is looking at a whole range of options within this space right now that we have and utilizing existing funding, and he's prepared to come back with that, I think, in a few weeks here, to give you a more comprehensive picture of all the requests and all the funding that is currently available. So I wanted just to add in that that is something, and I would suggest as a going forward motion that administration be directed to come back with information on a funding source. Ms. Hughes might have something to add on the specific question.
So yes, Chris has indicated that he would like to come forward to committee with a consolidated approach, a built-out plan that includes all the requests so that we can look over options.
Okay. Any other questions? I just have one more, and I guess this might be more for administration, but you know, if this is approved today, hopefully it's approved today, but are we cutting a check for $280,000, or is this like other processes where we would reimburse as needed. I'm just trying to get my head around how this looks for procurement, whether it's us procuring or Grand Spirit procuring, and then how we would safeguard that the money's advanced to Grand Spirit. Director Bork, is that yours?
I'll take that. We would come up to with an agreement with Grand Spirit on how these funds are allocated, making sure that the proper controls were in place so that it was utilized correctly. I believe, though, we have such a strong relationship with Grand Spirit that won't be an issue. We'd want to make sure that they had the funding in pocket so that they could move forward. So we would have an agreement in place, protect ourselves, but we would be extremely flexible so that they weren't having to cash manage moving forward on this.
Okay, fair enough. Mayor Clayton, did you have your hand up there?
Yes, thanks. Question for Director Bork. Is there any thought to or concern with funding the $100,000 line item portion that goes to site reports at this point? I guess my concern is if there's consideration for this not being at the Smith land, do we know that $100,000 is enough for the environmental phase 1 and 2 and traffic impact geotechnical work? Is this amount based on the work that is required at the Smith land? And that's probably more of a Mr. Madden question, but I feel like we're going into this a little bit blind, in my opinion. I'll look for maybe a question for Mr. Madden. The site report, $100,000, where are those, tell me what those estimates are based on, if it's solely based on the Smith land. And then a question for Director Burke, if we have any concern going into writing a check for $280,000 when I don't think that Council has had an actual discussion if this is 100% where we want this project.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if I can, really good question on this one. And this is specific to the Smith land, or at least the piece that the 5 acres or just under that Council has gifted to us. We appreciate that. Thank you. And that is our estimate based on each of those added up from previous lands that we've worked at, such as the Spirit River project, where we were required to complete each of these components. As I mentioned, unclear to us at this point, and Chris, I noticed Chris has joined us, but unclear to us is how many of those reports may be readily available. So this is certainly an adjustable item as we move along. However, some of those reports may, like a traffic impact assessment, would be something the city would specifically request at the time of construction, which is linked back to the funding folks such as CMHC, because they want to know that the local authorities are on board with the project they're trying to build. If that makes sense. So these are estimates back to the land itself. But I notice Chris is with us, and maybe he'd like to put in a few items. And Chris, we're talking about the site reports, the $100,000 for phase 1 environmental, those items.
Okay, fair enough. Council, was there, or through the chair, Mr. Plot, was there any specific question?
I think we're just wondering about the site reports, I guess, specifically, if you want to speak to those. I think that's what Mayor Clayton was talking about. And then I'll leave it at that in case I'm not rewording it properly, but I think it was more around the site reports.
Okay, and I suspect it's probably around the idea if we didn't proceed with this project at that site, whether there would be throwaway costs associated with that. I'm assuming where we're getting at?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's fair. Those reports, on the other hand, because they would be geotechnical reports, they would be the environmental assessment, they would provide value to the marketability of that land, potentially, because if anybody is going to do any sort of development, they're going to have to require those sorts of reports. So if this project wasn't to proceed, I think the repurposing of the land or the eventual disposal of it to the private sector, it would be a benefit to have those, and the I guess costs associated with them would potentially be offset by proceeding with another project or the sale of the land that had that included.
I guess just on that, I guess maybe a concern or something, and maybe it doesn't matter, but is it in the city's best interests? I mean, I think I definitely have an appetite. I want to see this happen, but is it in the city's best interest to give the Grand Spirit the money to do this work, or because it is city-owned land, would it be better for us to procure the environmental, the transit, the traffic reports, and those things as the municipality, and not have Grand Spirit do it, being that it is our land? Could maybe just somebody from the administration speak to just how we safeguard that. Of course, we have a great relationship with Grand Spirit. There's no concerns, but I just think for the community, how do we prove that us giving them the money to do work on our own land versus us just doing it and providing it for them? What's the difference, I guess? So, Director Manuel.
Certainly, that's a good point. So what I would suggest in regard to Grand Spirit's request here today is that administration be given the opportunity. That is a fair point that was just raised. I think there's a number of different ways to achieve the end product here. I think if we can go away and come back in a couple weeks, identifying consideration around exactly whether we provide that as a municipality and give it to Grand Spirit, or whether we just have Grand Spirit conduct it themselves. Additionally, we're going to want to identify the funding source for the ask. So I think in a couple weeks' time, administration has identified a path that we can bring forward that would likely address some of the concerns we're hearing this morning.
Okay, thanks, Director Manuel. I had Councillor O'Toole and then Mayor Clayton, please.
Yeah, I'd be really comfortable with that, coming back in 2 weeks with a lot of our concerns addressed and possible highlights of what we found out in these next 2 weeks.
Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Plot. Yeah, I support that as well. I guess it's in a bigger discussion and picture. I understand that if we do the traffic impact assessments and some site work, that we could get that back in the cost if we ever chose to sell the land. However, my concern is if now is the time to be investing in properties when we don't have a full picture of what land we do want to own, what land we don't want to own, if there's other land we do want to buy. I think this is a bigger discussion for council. The project aside, absolutely 100% support the project and agree there's a need. This is, in my opinion, is an overall sort of strategy discussion for council in what are we doing with our land? Are we wanting to invest in land so it's easier to sell, easier to develop? What are the thoughts behind this? Grand Spirit doing this project is, in my opinion, extremely important, but making sure it ends up in the right place so that it's not just what's best for the city as of today, but it's what's best for the facility going forward is even as important. So there's a lot of different layers here, in my opinion, and I don't know if council's really had that discussion of what we want to see with different lands going forward. And specifically, you know, Grand Spirit could go here, here, and here, but investing into land without being sure that a project is going there, I don't know if I support that at this time.
Okay, thanks for that. Well, Director Manuel, then back to Councillor Chu, please. Oh, you're just muted, Director Manuel.
Thank you. Again, I apologize that I had to leave and come back in and may have missed some of the preamble here. One of the things that I did identify in the correspondence we received from Grand Spirit Foundation was there is sometimes sensitivity about putting forward a project to the province for consideration in 2022 to kind of get shovels in the ground. So appreciate the dialogue around land planning. And I do agree that we should have some discussion around that, but I do also want to emphasize that Grand Spirit does have some time constraints ahead of them. So it is a dialogue that we should probably have sooner than later.
Yeah, good clarification. Councillor O'Toole, please.
Yeah, I'm fully supportive of Grand Spirit Foundation. I want the best for them. And also I want the city to provide the best in the facility, the size, make sure everything that we put our fingers in is what we actually need or even more. So yes, I'm still in favor of coming back in 2 weeks and reviewing all of the aspects of this discussion, and I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, that's Councillor O'Toole. I guess I just want to circle back and ask a question for administration with the time sensitivity, and just, you know, in speaking with Steve and Judy here the other day, I mean, their organization's got capacity issues as far as doing some of this stuff. So would it be prudent for the city to look after the geotechnical, most things, and just within our own organization do those things, get this site ready and start working on that sooner than later, rather than funding Grand Spirit and asking them to do it and then putting that work on them? Is that something you can maybe speak to, Director Manuel, and then if Steve and Judy could speak to that, if that's a concern? Because I think if we went that avenue, we potentially could fast track at least that part of it today. So Director Manuel?
Yeah, so certainly what's being requested for there is expertise that I think both the city and Grand Spirit Foundation would contract out those works. So, you know, I don't think 2 weeks is going to be too detrimental as far as having the discussions about the most appropriate path forward. But it is something the city does undertake these sorts of studies quite regularly. And it's something that our procurement department, in conjunction with some of our technical experts, could put together a scope of work rather quickly. So that was a very viable ask put forward by the committee. So I think it's worth exploring over the next couple of weeks.
Okay, thanks, Dan. And, you know, Steve or Judy, if you want to speak to this, does that change the course from Grand Spirit, or would that help potentially move that forward sooner than later? Or is that something that Grand Spirit feels that they need to be right involved with?
No, we'd be happy to allow the city to carry on with that. I think this was part and parcel to the project manager portion too, someone that would actually, you know, initiate those projects and get them on track and align it with the project itself. We're unclear on the size of the buildings or where they'll be. So this was, you know, those specific reports do not necessarily have to be done tomorrow initially. The ones we really need initially will be that business case and the costing analysis so that we're ready for the province's work. Again, I do need someone to help us out to do that on our side, so that's why we're also after that project manager. The P3 component of it, we're also considering the inventory, if that makes sense, Mr. Chairman, on a larger picture, because if we're going to go P3 road, this really should have a little larger discussion from council and Grand Spirit's standpoint for the housing inventory that's out there. There's some fairly old buildings that are in the inventory right now. So is there an opportunity to look at other capital means, I guess, is that question. So this is all in one big pot. Now, if we're delayed a little bit, we go into 2022, so be it. We would certainly understand that. We're still, you know, we're doing our best together as groups to get this done.
Okay, and just one other question, and then I'll come to Councillor Thiessen. Just one other question. In your letter, you're kind of saying that we need to try to have this by May 15th. That's not that far away to actually hire, procure, and start somebody, especially if we're going to defer this for potentially 2 more weeks. I guess how realistic was the May 15th date had we approved it today? And what does it look like if we do wait 2 weeks on that?
Yeah, so the actual business case takes anywhere from 2 to 3 months to do. There's quite a few ingredients that go into it, which includes the costing analysis or part and parcel of the rough drawings, as we call it. So the time delay, I guess we would just have to do our best to work with and then work with the province. It's based on the submission back to the province. May 15 for me aligns with our board meetings because of course, we have them once a month. And our first board meeting would be that week after the 15th, which we then start the approval process to get on to our full board meeting, which is in June. So long story short, it's aligned with a number of other steps that Grand Spirit has to try to get through so we can get to the province's door. Thank you. By June 30th, that's our submission deadline, June 30th to the province. So typically the end of June, my gang has provided a full approval and we put a bow on it and send it as fast as we can to the province. There's literally a few days left.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Thiessen?
Thanks, Chair Palat. Thanks, Judy and Steve, for coming in today and making this request. I guess this is a question for Director Manuel. In regards to sort of Mayor Clayton's talk about the appropriate lands and stuff like that. To me, that's a big, broad, larger discussion that inevitably could derail this whole project altogether. How close are we to, I know that this was asked a while back, but how close are we to having a presentation of the available lands for housing builds such as this for Grande Prairie Foundation?
So a presentation in regard to available city-owned lands today could be available immediately because, frankly, the options for viable land that we presently own is very limited. Now, available land from a private market perspective is incredibly broad and something that we haven't focused on to date. So that would really be subject to the nature of the build that we were looking to do. So, but to get to your point, when we shift our position on where we want stuff to be without a real clear direction as to where we want to focus things and what specifically it is we want to build, it does present some challenges with timelines as far as getting projects to fruition, because I think really what Grande Prairie is here in front of us today to do, and it is recognized that these reports will take a little bit of time to produce and that they may not be available for these deadlines that are coming. But what it does show is a commitment to actually hone in on a project and advance it forward. And I think that's something that's potentially been missing in this particular site development. So I guess if council wishes us to pursue, I hadn't previously considered that we were looking at overall land available within the city and in what various configurations of projects could be accomplished on them. If that's the intent, it would take us a little bit of time to do that.
Yeah, and that wasn't the intent of my question. Is largely in what Grande Prairie has put together for 150 plus unit build, hopefully on the 5-acre sites that we earmarked for them to build upon in the Smithlands. To your knowledge, do we have any city-owned land that could support a project such as this currently?
So, based on the analysis that administration's completed to date, the 3 parcels, technically there's 4 parcels of land that we have that could potentially accommodate a build like this. So one is Smith, one is directly south of Rotary House on the parcel there, which actually wouldn't accommodate something unless it was multi-story, like several stories high. There's the Montrose site, and then the Gateway site that council recently rezoned to direct control. There is some limitations with the Gateway site because of the road right-of-way that would affect the number of units that could be built on one particular parcel of that.
And council is also considering a different housing project, a medical model for that site as well.
Correct.
All right. Just wanted to ask those questions for clarity because I don't want to see this project get stalled at all. In good faith, we earmarked some lands for Grande Prairie to build upon, and they're doing their due diligence, and they have a good ask here. I don't want to slow it down because we have some maybes in the works. So I don't have a vote on this committee, but I do look forward to a report coming forward in 2 weeks, and giving Steve and his team the ball to be able to run and create this type of housing in the place that we have best suited for it right now. So that's my 2 cents. I look forward to further discussion. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. Just one more question for administration, as there has been talk about us having another conversation, and also in light of the time sensitivity here. We do have a strategic priorities scheduled Wednesday. Would there be any chance that we could have some conversation with council on that meeting, or is that agenda fully booked already? Not sure if that's, I see Mayor Clayton's answer.
So I think I'll ask CAO Galante to chime in here, but I think that it's more appropriate that we just schedule an in-camera council meeting for land discussions.
Yeah, that would be my preferred way as well. And for Wednesday, we have a full agenda, so I think this will be a conversation that probably deserves significant time, so we can schedule a separate in-camera.
Okay, so and that's something that we can confidently do here in the next week or so. I guess with sensitivity of time, and we just would like to see this give an answer one way or another sooner than later. So that's something we can address.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll work this week to schedule a meeting probably next week.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other conversation from committee on this matter today? No? Okay, and I guess we don't really have business arising as it was a delegate, but I do appreciate Mr. Madden and I'm just going to say Judy because I seem to bugger up your last name half the time, Judy, sorry, but I do appreciate you guys coming in today, and I don't know if you had any other comments before we close this portion off.
Yes, I just want to say on behalf of the foundation, as Mayor Clayton has indicated, that so we always have this thing of Smith lands, and so there are some other options I know in the business that you do. I'm just confident that land will be available, and so I'm grateful for that because that's what I've gotten from this meeting is the commitment is here with us as an individual municipality within our foundation. I think one of the things that's really important is that just as we did with the Spirit River project, I mean, that project wasn't in our backyards. I mean, I'm saying our backyards as in yours and mine, but what happened is because this is about regional seniors' needs, the rest of the municipalities were just, let's just get it done. And so I'm really, really grateful for that. And I hear today that we have this commitment, the commitment of, I hear you're saying we have the commitment to work with us regarding helping to fund our plan. And also that this is going to happen. Like that's what I feel today. That's what I hear today. And I'm grateful for that because then I can take that back to the board and say, yes, we're now in another project with another municipality. We have a really great track record of all the rest and then we will go forward. And so I thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Judy. Thanks for your passion on this stuff as well. So, Councillor Friesen.
Thanks. I wonder if I may make a motion of business arising.
You bet.
Thank you. So I would like to move that committee direct administration to identify and recommend potential funding sources for the full amount of $280,000.
Okay. Any discussion or debate on that, Councillor Bressie?
Actually, never mind. Sorry.
Okay. Anybody else with discussion or debate on that? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor? And opposed? So that passes with a 3-1. Any other business arising from this? No. Just a comment, and it doesn't need to be an action, but I know there's been discussion about other lands, and we had that today. Is that a report or something that we can have administration work with Grande Prairie to identify all the public owned lands that the city would have for future projects so that they know? Is that something we can provide them, or do we need a specific motion if that's something we want to provide them? Maybe Director Manuel, can you answer that one?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, could you just repeat that question?
Just wondering if it's something that we could have, without making a formal motion, if we can just have administration work with Grande Prairie to identify any vacant land that we can look at doing a project with Grande Prairie on that currently is in the city inventory.
So certainly it came across loud and clear to me the desire to do so, and for that in-camera component, absolutely, administration will undertake that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and I guess with that, we'll close our delegation business. Appreciate you guys being here today, and hopefully we'll be seeing you again soon enough. And we'll move on from there to our next item on our agenda, which is our Director's Service Area Report. So Director Manuel, if you want to jump in there, please.
Certainly I will. Thank you very much. So within Protective and Social Services, Community Social Development reports that the Youth Advisory Council is working with the Opioid Task Force on an education committee to advance public awareness opportunities. So that's a good initiative for Youth Council to be taking. The Home Support Program and one of our supervisors at CSD, Anna Stewart, have been nominated for the Passionate Heart Awards that are going to take place this February 12th. So really good to see the recognition occurring there. Over at Enforcement Services, they are dealing with some quarantines related to COVID-19 exposures, but are reporting that despite some loss of staffing, that they're able to maintain operations at this time without impact. And GPREP's reporting that ESS, so Emergency Social Services kits, have been developed for deployment to all the regions, all GPREP's municipalities, so the local towns, villages, county, and the city. And we have a large emergency social services kit prepared that we're housing with procurement at the City Service Center in case of a large-scale emergency in the area. GPREP also is preparing for the 2021 fire season, which is just around the corner. The fire department reports that they're heavy underway with annual training and getting all their qualifications in. And the RCMP has announced that the superintendent is doing more or less a virtual town hall where he's trying to solicit feedback from community members as to RCMP services and experiences, policing issues in the community. And I believe that's found under the city's citizen engagement site. So please, that's open, looks like, until February 19th. So anybody that has feedback to provide there, please do so. And one file of note from the RCMP is it looks like our Grande Prairie Crime Reduction Unit, which is a proactive unit of the RCMP detachment, with the assistance of Beaver Lodge RCMP and general duty members in Grande Prairie, we're able to identify the offenders of several break-and-enters involving 8 automated teller machines in the community, and ultimately we're able to conduct search warrants and arrest a few individuals that were responsible for those offenses. So good work there in executing that investigation. So that's it from Protective and Social Services.
All righty, thank you for that, Director Manuel. Any questions for Director Manuel?
I'm happy with the report.
All right. Okay, I guess if seeing none, we'll just continue on. And if you would like to update us on our outstanding item list, please.
Certainly. So we have 2 items there. So in response to the Chamber's request, we were hoping to bring it forward here this week, but ultimately I made the decision that it was going to be more efficient to roll up all of the housing-related requests and strategies that we plan to deploy in 2021 and bring it forward to the committee meeting in a couple weeks' time. That will provide an opportunity to assess that ask against asks like the Grand Spirit Foundation ask, Habitat for Humanity, and a number of other initiatives. So we're looking at them in a total picture as opposed to an isolation. So the timing around our in-camera pertaining to land and where we see some projects occurring will be real beneficial. So look forward to bringing that forward in a couple weeks' time. So I guess that would be March 2nd. And the Traffic Enforcement and Efficiency Report received an update on that last week, and it looks like that will be on track as well for that same date.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any questions about the outstanding item list, or anybody want to entertain a motion? Councilor O'Toole.
I'll make a motion to accept the outstanding items list as presented.
All right. Thank you for that. So that's all in favor of that? And that passes unanimously. Thank you for that, and that wraps up our Protective Social Services Committee agenda. I'll just ask, I think we need to take a quick break before we switch committees, but I think the next committee is up Community Services.